In the cold silence of deep space, where stars burn like distant memories and darkness swallows hope, Captain Natasha Rain stood before the observation window of the military cruiser Horizon's Edge. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman hardened by 15 years of navigating the loneliest corners of the galaxy, yet her eyes still held that spark of wonder that first drew her to the stars. Behind her, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency, a symphony of beeping consoles and whispered conversations. Lieutenant Thomas Beckett, her second in command, was a methodical man whose steady presence had saved her crew more times than she could count. At the navigation station sat Ensign Rachel Park, young and brilliant, her fingers dancing across holographic displays with the grace of a concert pianist. And in the corner, perpetually hunched over his scanners, was Dr. Felix Hartman, the ship's chief scientist whose obsession with anomalies bordered on religious fervor. The patrol had been routine, boring even, until the sensors screamed their warning. Natasha turned from the window as alarms pierced the calm. Red lights bathed the bridge in urgent crimson. Thomas was already at her side, his jaw tight with concern. "Captain, we have a massive gravitational distortion forming 300 kilometers off our port bow," he reported, his voice steady despite the tension crackling through the air. "Energy signatures are unlike anything in our database." Natasha moved to the command chair, her instincts sharpening. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, and what appeared made her breath catch. Space itself was tearing open, a wound in reality rimmed with colors that shouldn't exist. Purple lightning arced through swirling clouds of golden energy. The rift pulsed like a living thing, growing larger with each heartbeat. Rachel's voice trembled slightly as she read the data. "Captain, the energy output is astronomical. Whatever's creating this could power an entire planet." Dr. Hartman rushed forward, his eyes wild with excitement and fear. "This is a wormhole, but not natural. Something's forcing it open from the other side. Something with technology far beyond our understanding." Before Natasha could respond, the rift exploded with blinding brilliance. The bridge windows automatically darkened to protect their eyes. When the light faded, a ship emerged. It was colossal, dwarfing the Horizon's Edge like a whale beside a minnow. The vessel's hull bore the unmistakable markings of Earth fleet, but the design was ancient, from an era when humanity first reached for the stars. Yet this ship had been transformed. Massive structures jutted from its frame, pulsing with energy. Weapons systems that looked organic rather than mechanical lined its flanks. The ship radiated power that made their instruments weep. "Run identification protocols," Natasha ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. The computer processed the data, cross-referencing with historical archives. When the results appeared, Thomas actually stepped backward. "Captain, the computer identifies this vessel as the colony ship Wanderer. Launched from Earth in 2156. Status listed as lost with all hands. Presumed destroyed when it entered an unstable wormhole. That was 182 years ago." The bridge fell into stunned silence. The Wanderer had been legendary, carrying 30,000 colonists to establish humanity's first extrasolar settlement. Its disappearance had been a tragedy that shaped an entire generation. Families still visited the memorial gardens on Earth, laying flowers for ancestors who never reached their promised land. "Life signs," Natasha demanded, needing to know if this was truly a ghost ship or something more. "Affirmative, Captain," Rachel replied, her fingers trembling over the controls. "Reading thousands of human biosignatures aboard. They're alive." Impossible murmurs rippled through the bridge crew. Dr. Hartman pushed his glasses up his nose, a nervous habit when his mind raced ahead of his mouth. "Captain, if those people have been gone for 182 years but they're still alive, then they've discovered something extraordinary. Life extension technology, temporal manipulation, or perhaps they experience time differently wherever they went. The implications are staggering." Thomas cut through the speculation with cold practicality. "Captain, I'm detecting an automated transmission from the Wanderer. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. Audio only." "Play it," Natasha said, bracing herself. Static crackled through the speakers, ancient and haunting. Then a voice emerged, filtered through decades of interference but unmistakably human. "This is the colony ship Wanderer. We have returned home. Humanity will never kneel. We have returned home. Humanity will never kneel." The message repeated, an echo from the past carrying a warning for the future. "Attempt direct communication," Natasha ordered. "I want to speak with their commanding officer." The communications officer, Lieutenant James Wright, tried multiple frequencies before shaking his head. "No response, Captain. They're not acknowledging our hails. Just that automated message on loop." Dr. Hartman was already deep in analysis, pulling up energy readings that made him pale. "Captain, you need to see this. The Wanderer is generating power levels that exceed our entire battle fleet combined. And look at these gravitational wave patterns. They're manipulating spacetime itself. This technology, it's not human. Or at least, it wasn't human when they left Earth." Natasha felt ice forming in her gut. Humanity had joined the Galactic Collective 40 years ago, discovering they were far from alone in the universe. The Collective was a coalition of 12 alien species, ancient and powerful, who maintained strict control over technological development among younger races. They had rules, regulations enforced with overwhelming force. Humans were forbidden from developing certain technologies deemed too dangerous, weapons that could destabilize entire star systems, engines that could tear holes in reality, artificial intelligence that could evolve beyond control. The penalties for violation were severe. Entire civilizations had been quarantined, their worlds locked away from the galaxy until they learned to follow the rules. "Send an emergency transmission to Earth Command," Natasha ordered, her mind already racing through scenarios. "Encrypt it with alpha-level security. Tell them we found the Wanderer and it's carrying technology that violates collective law. We need instructions immediately." "Also done, Captain," Thomas replied. "But there's a problem. The Collective monitors our transmissions. The moment we sent that message, the enforcers would have intercepted it. They'll be here soon." "How soon?" Natasha asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. The enforcers were the Collective's military arm, beings of immense power who ensured compliance. Thomas checked his calculations. Based on their standard response time to technological violations, 3 hours. Maybe less. They don't appreciate surprises. 3 hours to figure out what happened to the Wanderer. 3 hours before the most powerful military force in the galaxy arrived to judge whether humanity had broken laws it didn't know existed when that ship left Earth. 3 hours to prevent a potential war. "Captain," Rachel interrupted, her voice rising with alarm. "The Wanderer is launching something. Multiple small craft, heading directly toward us." Natasha's hand went to the tactical display. "Defensive posture, but do not power weapons unless absolutely necessary. Those are humans over there, possibly our own people lost in time. I will not fire first." The bridge lights shifted to yellow alert status. Crew members took their stations with practiced efficiency. Natasha watched the approaching craft, small shuttles that moved with eerie precision. They weren't fleeing the Wanderer. They were coming with purpose. The lead shuttle docked with the horizon's edge, magnetic clamps engaging with a solid thunk that reverberated through the hull. Natasha assembled a security team and made her way to the docking bay. Thomas and Dr. Hartman flanked her. They positioned themselves behind portable shield generators as the airlock began its cycling process. The inner door hissed open. Steam billowed from the shuttle's interior, carrying the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and strange. Through the mist, figures emerged. They wore uniforms Natasha recognized from historical archives, the old Earth fleet design from before the Collective contact. Simple gray jumpsuits with the blue globe of Earth over the heart. But the people wearing those uniforms looked impossibly young, vital, their eyes gleaming with intelligence and something harder to define. Purpose. Certainty. Power. A woman stepped forward. She was tall, with copper skin and silver hair bound in intricate braids. Her posture radiated authority. She carried no visible weapons, but Natasha had learned long ago that the most dangerous people rarely needed them. "Permission to come aboard," the woman said. Her voice was strong, musical even, but underneath Natasha heard steel. "I am Commander Sienna Cross of the colony ship Wanderer. We've traveled a very long road to return home." Natasha studied the woman, noting the way her crew stood behind her with absolute confidence. "Permission granted, Commander Cross. I'm Captain Natasha Rain of the Horizon's Edge. You and I need to have a very serious conversation about where you've been and what you've brought back with you." Commander Cross smiled, and Natasha saw galaxies reflected in her eyes. "The collective told you that humanity had limits, didn't they, Captain? That there were boundaries we could never cross, technologies we were too young to possess." She stepped fully into the docking bay, her crew following. "We're here to tell you that the collective lied. And we're going to prove it." The conference room felt too small for the revelations it was about to contain. Natasha sat across from Commander Sienna Cross, while Thomas and Dr. Hartman occupied the sides of the table. The other members of the Wanderers delegation stood against the walls, silent and watchful. Their presence was intimidating, not because of any overt threat, but because of the quiet confidence they radiated. These were people who had seen things, learned things, and returned changed. Sienna placed a small device on the table. It was smooth and black, about the size of a deck of cards, with patterns of light moving beneath its surface like bioluminescent fish in dark water. "This contains our complete journey logs," she began. "Everything we experienced, everyone we met, everything we learned. But before I share this data, you need to understand what you're about to see will challenge everything the collective has told humanity about our place in the universe." Dr. Hartman leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. "Where did you go, Commander?" "The wormhole we entered, it wasn't random, was it?" Sienna shook her head. "No, Doctor. It was a doorway, one of thousands scattered throughout the galaxy. The collective knows about them. They've kept them hidden from younger species for millennia. We stumbled through one by accident, and it took us to a region of space far beyond collective territory. A place they call the Outer Reach." "The Outer Reach," Natasha repeated, tasting the words. "I've never heard of it. The collective star charts don't extend that far." "That's intentional," Sienna replied, her expression hardening. "The collective controls information as carefully as they control technology. The Outer Reach is where the old civilizations went, the truly ancient ones who refused to accept the collective's limitations. They've been building, advancing, evolving for millions of years while the collective enforces stagnation." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "If these ancient civilizations are so advanced, why haven't they returned? Why leave the known galaxy?" "Because the collective would destroy them if they did," Sienna said flatly. "The collective isn't a benevolent alliance, Captain Rain. It's a control mechanism. The oldest species in the collective discovered long ago that advancement beyond a certain point leads to transcendence, to evolution into forms that no longer need physical reality. They were terrified of this, terrified of being left behind. So they created the collective to ensure no younger species could surpass them. They enforce artificial limits, claiming it's for safety, but it's really about maintaining their dominance." Dr. Hartman looked skeptical. "That's a serious accusation, Commander. The collective has helped humanity tremendously. They shared technology, medical advances, cultural knowledge. All carefully measured," Sienna countered. "They gave you just enough to keep you satisfied, but never enough to truly threaten their position. Tell me, Doctor, have you ever wondered why the collective forbids research into quantum consciousness, dimensional engineering, or self-replicating nanotechnology? They claim it's dangerous. And maybe it is," Dr. Hartman admitted. "Those fields could lead to weapons of unimaginable destruction. Or they could lead to liberation," Sienna said softly. The civilizations in the outer reach don't use those technologies for weapons. They use them to transcend the physical limitations that the collective is so desperate to maintain. Natasha held up her hand, needing to slow this down. Let's say I believe you, Commander. Let's say the collective has been limiting humanity's development for their own benefit. What did you learn in the outer reach? What happened to your ship and your people? Sienna activated the device. Holographic images filled the conference room. Natasha saw alien cities that defied physics, structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She saw beings of pure energy conversing with the Wanderer's crew. She saw technology that looked like magic, engines that folded space like origami, weapons that could unmake matter with a thought that we spent 30 years in the outer reach, Sienna explained as the images played. To us, it was 3 decades. But time flows differently there. The ancient ones taught us, shared their knowledge freely because they saw in humanity what the collective fears. Potential. Adaptability. The capacity to evolve beyond our current form. They showed us that the restrictions the collective places on development aren't safety measures. They're chains. And they gave us the keys to unlock them. Dr. Hartman was staring at the holographs with tears in his eyes. The mathematics alone, he whispered. The energy systems, the quantum architecture. This would revolutionize everything we know about physics. Thomas remained focused on the tactical situation. Commander Cross, in 3 hours, the collective enforcers will arrive. When they scan your ship and see this technology, they will consider it a violation of fundamental law. They'll demand you surrender it or face destruction. We know, Sienna said calmly. We've been preparing for this confrontation since we entered the wormhole to return home. The question is, Captain Rain, which side will humanity choose? Will you stand with the collective and their comfortable cage, or will you stand with us and fight for the right to determine your own evolutionary path? Natasha felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't a decision one captain should make. This was a choice that would define humanity's future. I need to contact Earth Command, she said. This goes far beyond my authority. You won't reach them in time, Sienna replied. The collective monitors all communications. The moment you try to send a detailed report, they'll jam your signals. They can't allow this information to spread. Then what do you suggest? Natasha asked, frustration creeping into her voice. Sienna stood, and her crew moved with her in perfect synchronization. We're offering humanity a choice, Captain. Right here, right now. My ship carries enough technology to bootstrap your entire civilization to the next level. Faster than light drives that don't require collective-approved jump gates. Energy systems that would make you independent of their power networks. Manufacturing technology that could end scarcity. Medical advances that could extend human lifespans indefinitely. All of it, freely shared. But once you take this step, there's no going back. The collective will view it as rebellion. There will be consequences. Before Natasha could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. Rachel's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, we have incoming vessels. Multiple signatures, collective military configuration. They're early. The enforcers are here. Sienna didn't look surprised. They must have faster ships in this sector than we anticipated. Captain Rain, you have minutes to decide. Will you let them take us, let them bury this technology and maintain their control over humanity? Or will you stand with us and show the galaxy that humans refuse to be limited by someone else's fear? Natasha looked at Thomas, saw the conflict in his eyes. She looked at Dr. Hartman, saw the hunger for knowledge warring with the fear of consequences. Then she looked at Sienna and saw something that made her decision. Hope. Real, genuine hope for a better future. Red alert, Natasha said into the intercom. All hands to battle stations. Raise shields and power all defensive systems. She turned to Sienna. Commander Cross, get your people back to the Wanderer. We're going to need everything that ship has if we're going to survive what comes next. Sienna smiled, fierce and proud. Welcome to the revolution, Captain Rain. Humanity just took its first step toward true freedom. The conference room emptied rapidly as crew members rushed to their positions. Natasha moved swiftly toward the bridge, her mind racing through tactical scenarios. The collective enforcers were powerful, their ships equipped with weapons that could vaporize planets. But the Wanderer had technology from civilizations that made the collective look primitive. The question was whether it would be enough. And whether using it would mark humanity as rebels in the eyes of every other species in the galaxy. She reached the bridge to find organized chaos. Rachel was coordinating defensive positions while Thomas directed power distribution. Dr. Hartman had abandoned his science station to assist with tactical analysis. On the main screen, 5 massive ships materialized from hyperspace. They were elegant and terrible, crystalline structures that caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Enforcer vessels, designed not just to fight but to intimidate. "Open a channel," Natasha ordered. "Let's see if we can talk our way through this." The screen shifted to show an alien face. The Enforcer commander was a Valerian, a species known for their rigid adherence to law and their complete lack of mercy for those who violated it. Its features were sharp and angular, its eyes multifaceted like insects. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that made human ears ache. "Human vessel Horizon's Edge, this is Enforcer Prime Kelthax. You are harboring a ship that has violated collective technology protocols. Surrender the vessel designated Wanderer immediately or be designated as accomplices to their crimes. The penalty for such crimes is complete quarantine. Your species will be isolated from the galactic community until you demonstrate compliance with collective law." Natasha took a deep breath. Enforcer Prime Kelthax, the Wanderer has been lost for 182 years. They were not subject to collective law when they departed Earth. Any technology they acquired was obtained independently. We request a diplomatic hearing to resolve this situation peacefully. Kelthax's expression didn't change. "The law is absolute, Captain Rain. The technology aboard the Wanderer is forbidden regardless of how it was acquired. You have 1 standard hour to comply. After that, we will take the vessel by force and your ship will be destroyed for interference." The transmission ended abruptly. Thomas turned to Natasha, his face grim. "Captain, we can't fight 5 Enforcer ships. Our weapons would barely scratch their shields." Before Natasha could respond, Sienna's voice came through on a direct channel. "Captain Rain, the Wanderer is ready to support you. We have weapons that will surprise the Enforcers. But I need to know you're committed to this path. Once we fire on collective forces, humanity will be marked as a rebellious species. Every human ship, every human colony will become a target." Natasha closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the millions of humans across the galaxy who had no idea their fate was being decided in this moment. Then she thought of the holograph Sienna had shown her, the impossible cities, the beings of pure energy, the future the collective wanted to deny humanity. She opened her eyes and found her resolve. "Commander Cross, power up your weapons. Humanity didn't crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to be told how high we're allowed to fly. If the collective wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Let's show them what humans can do when we refuse to kneel." The space between the Horizon's Edge and the Enforcer fleet crackled with tension. 58 minutes remained in Kelthax's ultimatum, and Natasha used every second to prepare. The Wanderer had moved into a defensive position alongside her ship, its massive bulk reassuring despite the overwhelming odds. On the bridge, Thomas coordinated with the Wanderer's tactical team, his initial skepticism replaced by grim determination. Dr. Hartman monitored the energy readings from their unexpected ally, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend the power levels he was witnessing. Rachel maintained communications, her young face set with determination that made Natasha proud. Commander Cross appeared on the view screen, her expression calm but intense. "Captain Rain, we're sharing our shield harmonics with your ship. The Enforcers have weapons that phase through conventional defenses, but this technology will protect you. We're also uploading tactical data to your weapons systems. It won't make your missiles as powerful as ours, but it will make them effective enough to matter. Natasha nodded her gratitude. What should we expect when the shooting starts, Commander? Kelthax will try to disable us quickly, Sienna replied. Enforcer doctrine prioritizes overwhelming force to minimize resistance. They'll target our engines first, try to leave us dead in space. But they've never fought anyone with outer-reach technology. We're going to give them an education they won't forget. Thomas looked up from his console. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup in the Wanderer. They're charging weapons systems that are off any scale I've ever seen. Whatever they're about to do, it's going to be spectacular. Sienna's image smiled slightly. We learned from civilizations who survived wars that lasted millennia, Captain. The collective thinks their technology is supreme because they've never faced a real challenge. Watch what happens when someone fights back with knowledge earned through necessity rather than handed down as a gift. The timer hit 0. Enforcer Prime Kelthax's face reappeared on the screen. Your time has expired, Captain Rain. You have chosen to protect criminals against collective law. You will be treated accordingly. May your species learn wisdom from your mistake. The 5 Enforcer ships began to glow, their crystalline hulls pulsing with gathering energy. Natasha gripped her command chair. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Weapons free. Show them that humans don't surrender easily. The Enforcer vessels fired simultaneously, beams of coherent energy that could punch through a moon. The Horizon's Edge rolled hard to port, its shields flaring as one beam grazed them. But the shield held, reinforced by the Wanderer's technology. The other beam struck the Wanderer directly and simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that operated on principles the collective had forbidden centuries ago. Return fire, Natasha ordered. Let's make this interesting. The Horizon's Edge launched a spread of missiles, each one enhanced with data from the Wanderer. They moved faster than standard munitions, their trajectories impossible to predict. 3 struck Enforcer shields and detonated with force that made the massive ships shudder. It was barely a scratch, but it was more damage than the Enforcers had expected to take. More importantly, it proved that humans could hurt them. Now the Wanderer responded. Ports opened along its hull, revealing weapons that looked organic, alive. Energy gathered, not in straight lines but in spirals, in patterns that seemed to pull at the fabric of space itself. When the Wanderer fired, reality screamed. The beams that emerged were nothing like conventional weapons. They moved like living things, twisting and turning, hunting their targets with predatory intelligence. They struck 2 Enforcer ships simultaneously, and instead of exploding, the impacts created cascading failures that rippled through the crystalline hulls like cracks in ice. 1 Enforcer vessel went dark, its systems overloaded. The other began to list, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. What was that? Thomas breathed, staring at the destruction in awe. Quantum disruptors, Sienna explained calmly on the comm channel. They don't just damage matter. They temporarily destabilize the quantum bonds holding matter together. The collective banned research into these weapons 3 million years ago because they level the playing field between advanced and primitive civilizations. Kelthax's face appeared again, and for the first time, the Enforcer showed emotion. Shock and fear warred across its alien features. You possess forbidden weapons. This is a crime against the collective and all civilized species. You will be destroyed for this transgression. All Enforcer vessels, maximum power. Eliminate both ships immediately. The remaining 3 Enforcer ships began to glow with terrifying intensity. They were preparing to fire their planet-killer weapons, the ultimate sanction against species who broke the most sacred laws. Natasha felt her stomach drop. Those weapons could sterilize worlds, and now they were aimed at her ship and the Wanderer. Sienna's voice cut through the panic. Captain Rain, trust me. Do not evade. Hold your position. Natasha looked at Thomas, saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. But she had committed to this path. She had chosen to stand with these returned explorers against the entire might of the collective. Hold position, she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. All power to forward shields. If we're going down, we go down fighting. The enforcers fired. 3 beams of annihilation, each carrying enough energy to crack a planet's crust, converged on the Wanderer and the horizon's edge. Dr. Hartman closed his eyes. Rachel whispered a prayer. Thomas gripped his console so hard his knuckles turned white, the beams struck. And the Wanderer sang. Ports along the ancient ship's hull opened, and from within emerged a field of energy unlike anything in collective science. It wasn't a shield. It was something far more profound. The planet killer beams hit the field and simply stopped, frozen in space like insects in amber. The energy didn't dissipate or reflect. It was held, contained, converted. The Wanderer absorbed the full power of 3 weapons designed to destroy worlds, and then it redirected that energy back at its attackers. The returned beams moved with surgical precision. They didn't destroy the enforcer ships. Instead, they systematically disabled every weapon, every engine, every offensive system. Within seconds, 3 of the collective's most powerful vessels hung dead in space, their crews alive but completely helpless. The bridge of the horizon's edge erupted in shocked cheers. Thomas laughed in disbelief. Dr. Hartman stared at his instruments as if they'd betrayed him. Rachel actually jumped from her seat, pumping her fist in the air. Natasha allowed herself a small smile, though her mind was already racing ahead to the consequences. Commander Cross, she said quietly. What you just did will be seen as an act of war by the collective. They'll send everything they have. I know, Sienna replied, her voice solemn. But they needed to see that humanity won't be bullied anymore. And the rest of the galaxy needed to see that the collective isn't invincible. Change requires catalyst moments, Captain. This is ours. Word of this engagement will spread. Other species who've chafed under collective restrictions will take notice. The revolution has begun. An incoming transmission interrupted them. Earth Command, broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Natasha accepted the link, and Fleet Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the past hour. Captain Rain, what in the name of all that's holy have you done? The collective is screaming for your head and threatening to quarantine our entire species. We have reports of enforcer fleets mobilizing across 3 sectors. You've started a war. With respect, Admiral, Natasha replied, the Wanderer started a revolution. And I chose to stand with humanity's right to determine its own future rather than accept limits imposed by species who fear our potential. I'd make the same choice again. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. I've spent 40 years watching the collective dangle carrots while holding leashes, Captain. Watching them give us just enough to keep us grateful but never enough to truly stand as equals. Part of me has always wondered when some foolish, brave human would say enough. I suppose I have my answer now. What are your orders, Admiral? Natasha asked. Morrison's smile faded into something harder, more determined. The collective has issued an ultimatum. Surrender you, your crew, and the Wanderer for judgment, or face total economic and military embargo. Every human colony, every trade route, every diplomatic tie. They're trying to force Earth to choose between survival and principle, and what has Earth chosen? Natasha asked, though she already knew the answer. She could see it in Morrison's eyes. The Prime Minister addressed the Planetary Council an hour ago, Morrison said quietly. She told the collective that humanity didn't survive ice ages, plagues, and world wars by surrendering when threatened. She told them that if they want to embargo us, they're welcome to try. But humans have been making something from nothing since we learned to make fire. We'll adapt. We always do. Morrison leaned closer to the camera. Captain Rain, Commander Cross, you've been given full authorization to coordinate Earth's defense. The Wanderer's technology will be shared with every human ship, every human colony. If the collective wants a war, they'll get one. But they'll be fighting a humanity that refuses to accept artificial limits on what we can become. The transmission ended. Natasha sat in her command chair, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Humanity had declared independence from the galactic order. Billions of lives now hung in the balance, their fates determined by decisions made in the heat of battle. She felt the weight crushing down on her, threatening to break her resolve. Then Sienna's voice cut through her doubts. Captain Rain, I know what you're feeling. The fear, the responsibility, the question of whether you made the right choice. I've been carrying that weight for 30 years. But let me tell you what I learned in the outer reach. The civilizations that transcended, that evolved beyond physical limitation, they all faced this moment. The choice between comfortable stagnation and dangerous growth. Every single one chose growth. Not because it was safe, but because the alternative was slow death of spirit and potential. Natasha looked at her crew. Thomas, who'd followed her into battle against impossible odds. Rachel, whose eyes shone with tears but also with pride. Dr. Hartman, who'd seen proof that everything he thought he knew about physics was merely a beginning. These were the people who would carry humanity forward, who would transform this act of defiance into a new chapter of human achievement. You're right, Commander Cross, Natasha said, strength returning to her voice. We chose growth. Now we have to prove we can handle it. She activated the ship-wide intercom. Attention all hands. Today we stood against an empire and showed them that humanity bows to no one. Tomorrow, they'll come at us with everything they have. But we won't face them alone. The Wanderer has given us the tools to level the playing field. And from what I've learned today, when humans have the right tools and the will to use them, there's nothing in this universe we can't accomplish. She paused, letting her words sink in. We're going home. And we're bringing a revolution with us. 3 months after the engagement that would be remembered as the Defiance at Kelthax Point, Natasha stood in the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital station. Below her, the planet gleamed blue and white, beautiful and fragile and endlessly resilient. But it was what surrounded Earth that truly captured her attention. Hundreds of ships, all bearing the markings of Earth fleet, each one retrofitted with technology from the Wanderer. Not copies, Sienna had been careful to explain, but adaptations. The ancient knowledge had been shared freely, but humanity had to understand it, integrate it, make it their own. And they had, with a speed that surprised even the Wanderer's crew. Dr. Hartman had led teams of scientists working around the clock, translating alien physics into human mathematics. Engineers had reverse-engineered quantum disruptors and dimensional shields, then improved them with human ingenuity. Manufacturing facilities that once produced conventional ships now created vessels that bent space and harvested energy from quantum foam. The transformation was breathtaking. Thomas appeared beside her, looking considerably more rested than he had during those desperate hours of battle. He'd been promoted to admiral, given command of Earth's rapid response fleet. The collective doesn't know what to do with us, he said, amusement coloring his voice. 3 months ago, we were a minor species barely worth their attention. Now we're an active threat to their entire power structure. They've tried sanctions, diplomatic pressure, even attempted blockades. Nothing works. Natasha smiled. Because we're not alone anymore. That was the part the collective hadn't anticipated. When word spread that humanity had stood against the enforcers and won, other species had taken notice. The Talixians, whose homeworld sat rich with resources the collective controlled, had quietly reached out. The Morgoth Unity, tired of technological restrictions that kept them dependent on collective infrastructure, had opened secret negotiations. Even the reclusive Ven had sent messages of support. The galaxy, it turned out, was full of species who'd chafed under collective rule but lacked the courage or capability to resist. Humanity had become the symbol of that resistance, and the Wanderer's returned crew had become teachers, sharing knowledge with anyone brave enough to accept it. Rachel, now captain of the newest Earth vessel, the Pathfinder, walked over with a data pad. "Latest reports from the frontier colonies," she said. The collective pulled back their observation stations from the Kepler belt. They're consolidating forces in their core territories, preparing for what comes next. "What do you think that will be?" Natasha asked, though she had her own theories. Rachel considered the question seriously. "The old collective would have crushed us by now. The fact that they're hesitating means they're afraid. Not of our weapons, though those help. They're afraid of what we represent. Proof that their entire system is built on maintaining control through artificial scarcity of knowledge. If that breaks, if every species has access to advanced technology, the collective loses the only thing that gave them power." Sienna joined them, her silver hair catching the light from Earth below. She looked different now, more relaxed, as if a burden she'd carried for decades had finally been lifted. "The Council of Ancient Civilizations in the Outer Reach has made contact," she announced. "They've been watching humanity's progress. They're pleased." "Pleased enough to offer more help?" Natasha asked. "More than help," Sienna replied. "They're offering membership. Full access to the archives of knowledge they've accumulated over millions of years. The catch is that we have to prove we can use that knowledge responsibly. They want to see how we handle this transition before opening the deeper vaults." "So we're on trial," Thomas observed. "In a way," Sienna admitted. "But it's a trial we can pass. The Ancient Ones don't judge based on perfection. They judge based on growth, on willingness to learn from mistakes, on the courage to keep reaching even when reaching is dangerous." Dr. Hartman arrived, practically vibrating with excitement. "You need to see this," he said, pulling up holographic displays. "Remember how the collective said faster than light communication was impossible without their relay network? We just proved them wrong. Using principles from the Wanderer's database, we've created quantum entanglement communicators that work instantly across any distance. No relays, no delays, no collective oversight. The implications are staggering." Natasha studied the data, her mind racing. This changed everything. Instant communication meant human colonies could coordinate without depending on collective infrastructure. It meant independence, true independence, from the systems that had controlled the flow of information across the galaxy. "How long until we can deploy these widely?" she asked. "We're manufacturing them now," Hartman replied. "Every human ship, every colony, every diplomatic mission will have them within 6 months. And the best part is the design is simple enough that we can share it with our allies. The collective's monopoly on interstellar communication is about to end." The group fell silent, contemplating the magnitude of this breakthrough. Then Thomas laughed, a sound of pure joy. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the early days of the Internet on Earth. How information wanted to be free, how technology that connected people couldn't be controlled by any one government or corporation. I think he'd appreciate the irony. We're doing the same thing on a galactic scale." An alarm chimed softly. "Incoming vessel," Rachel reported, checking her pad. "It's broadcasting collective diplomatic codes. They're requesting a meeting." Natasha and Sienna exchanged glances. "Let them dock," Natasha said. "It's time to hear what they have to say." An hour later, Natasha sat across a conference table from Ambassador Zinn, a member of the collective's ruling council. Zinn was a Lothrani, a species of ethereal beings who communicated as much through scent and color changes as through words. Currently, Zinn's skin flickered with patterns that Natasha's translator identified as expressing deep concern mixed with grudging respect. "Captain Rain, Commander Cross," Zinn began, its voice melodious but edged with tension. "I come bearing a message from the Collective Council. They wish to negotiate." Negotiate what? Sienna asked coolly. You've spent 3 months trying to isolate us, sabotage our efforts, and turn other species against us. What's changed? What's changed, Zin replied, its colors shifting to darker hues, is that 17 species have formally requested access to the technologies you've been sharing. 17 more are expected to make similar requests within the month. The collective's authority is eroding, not because of military defeat, but because you've proven that our restrictions were never about safety. They were about control. And now that the truth is visible, we can no longer maintain the illusion. Natasha leaned forward. So the collective is willing to lift its restrictions. Allow open technological development and research. Zin's colors swirled with something that might have been regret. Not the entire collective. The council is divided. Some species want to maintain the old ways, even if it means conflict. Others, including my own people, have begun to question whether we had the right to limit younger species in the first place. What we're proposing is a new framework. A partnership rather than a hierarchy. Sienna's expression remained skeptical. And what would this partnership look like in practice? No more forbidden technologies, Zin explained. No more enforced dependencies. Species would be free to develop as they see fit, though we would offer guidance to those who want it. In exchange, we ask for cooperation in managing truly dangerous discoveries. There are technologies in the universe that could destroy galaxies if misused. We propose a coalition to study and safeguard such knowledge, with representation from all species, not just the old collective members. Thomas spoke up. You're essentially proposing to dismantle the power structure that's existed for millions of years. Why should we trust that the collective won't simply rebuild that structure once the immediate pressure eases? Because the alternative is war, Zin said bluntly, its colors flashing with urgency. And that's a war nobody wins. The collective has weapons we haven't deployed yet, weapons that could sterilize entire systems. But we've seen what you did to the Enforcer fleet. We've analyzed the Wanderer's technology. A conflict between us would devastate this entire region of space. Millions of innocent beings would die. Is that really the future you want? Natasha sat back, considering. She looked at Sienna, saw her own thoughts reflected there. They'd come so far, risked so much, to break the collective's control. But the goal had never been destruction. It had been freedom. The freedom to choose humanity's path without artificial limits. If the collective was willing to grant that, was continuing the conflict worth the cost? We'll need guarantees, Natasha said finally. Verifiable, enforceable agreements. Free access to technology. The right to share knowledge with other species. Full representation in any new galactic governance structure. And most importantly, no retaliation against species who've supported us. No punishing our allies for standing with humanity. Zin's colors brightened, showing hope. Those terms are acceptable. The Council is prepared to draft formal agreements. But there's one more thing. The ancient civilizations in the outer reach, the ones who taught you, we need to establish contact with them as well. They represent knowledge and power beyond anything we've achieved. If there's to be true change, they must be part of the conversation. Sienna smiled slightly. I suspect they've been waiting for this moment. For the younger species to demand their seat at the table. I can arrange introductions. But be prepared, Ambassador. The ancient ones have very little patience for those who seek to control rather than to teach. They'll test the collective's sincerity. We welcome such tests, Zin replied, its colors displaying what Natasha's translator identified as determination mixed with humility. We've grown complacent in our power. Perhaps it's time we remembered what it means to be students rather than masters. The meeting concluded with tentative agreements to continue negotiations. As Zin departed, Natasha found herself standing once again at the observation window, looking down at Earth. Sienna joined her, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you think it will work?" Natasha asked. "The peace? The partnership?" Sienna considered the question. "I think we've changed the equation. The collective can't go back to how things were, and we've proven that trying to hold species back only delays the inevitable. But there will be challenges. Species that resist change. Technologies that emerge faster than wisdom to use them. Conflicts over resources and ideology. Change is never clean or easy. But it's necessary," Natasha finished. "Yes," Sienna agreed. "And humanity has shown it has the courage to push for change even when it's dangerous. That's why the Ancient Ones took interest in us. Not because we're the smartest or the strongest, but because we refuse to accept limitations that others impose. We keep reaching, keep growing, keep asking what's possible rather than accepting what we're told." Below them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware of the revolution its children had sparked among the stars. But change was coming to that blue world, change that would transform humanity and ripple outward to touch every species in the galaxy. The age of artificial limits was ending. The age of unlimited potential was beginning. And it had started with one colony ship that refused to stay lost, one captain who chose courage over compliance, and one species that proved the most dangerous force in the universe isn't advanced technology or ancient knowledge. It's the refusal to stop reaching for tomorrow, no matter how many obstacles stand in the way. Years from now, Natasha thought, historians would debate whether the defiance at Kelthak's Point was the start of a new era or simply humanity's nature finally expressing itself on a galactic stage. She suspected it was both. Humans had always been explorers, pioneers, rebels against the status quo. The collective had tried to channel that nature, control it, limit it. But nature, whether human or cosmic, always found a way to break free. "Commander Cross," she said, turning to face the woman who'd brought revelation from beyond known space. "Thank you. For coming back. For sharing what you learned. For giving humanity the tools to stand as equals." Sienna's smile was warm. "Thank you for being the kind of captain who chose principle over safety. Who stood with us when it would have been easier to stand aside. That's the humanity I remembered from before we left. That's the humanity worth fighting for." The observation deck's door opened, and Rachel entered with a message pad. "Captain, we're receiving requests from 42 different species asking for cultural exchanges and technology sharing agreements. Earth Command wants to know how to prioritize responses." Natasha laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Tell them to say yes to all of them. We didn't fight for freedom just to hoard it. Knowledge is meant to be shared. That's how civilizations grow." Rachel grinned and hurried off to relay the message. Thomas joined them, looking thoughtful. "You know what the strangest part of all this is," he said. "We spent decades thinking we needed the collective. That without their technology and guidance, we'd be lost. But the moment we stood on our own, we discovered we were never as limited as they wanted us to believe. The only real limits were the ones we accepted. That's the lesson the Ancient Ones wanted us to learn," Sienna said softly. "The universe is vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder is potential. Every species, every individual, carries within them the capacity for transformation. The tragedy is when that potential is suppressed by fear, either fear within or fear imposed by others. Humanity's gift isn't superior intelligence or strength. It's the stubborn insistence that tomorrow can be better than today, and the willingness to fight for that better tomorrow even when the odds seem impossible." Dr. Hartman appeared, carrying yet another data pad, his face flushed with excitement. "The first quantum communication relay is online. I just spoke with our colony in the Andromeda sector. Instant connection, clear as if they were in the next room. Do you understand what this means? No more isolation. No more colonies cut off from home. We're bringing humanity together across the galaxy." Natasha felt tears prick her eyes. This was what they'd fought for. Not just advanced technology or independence from the collective, but the ability to keep humanity connected as it spread across the stars. The ability to remain one people even while embracing infinite diversity. She thought of all the sacrifices, the risks, the moments of terror during that first battle. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that it had been worth it. Every single moment. "Attention all personnel," she said, activating the station-wide comm. "This is Captain Natasha Rain. 3 months ago, we made a choice that changed everything. We chose to stand for humanity's right to determine its own future. Today, I'm proud to announce that choice has borne fruit beyond our wildest dreams. The collective is negotiating genuine partnership. 42 species are requesting to join our alliance. And we've just activated technology that will keep every human, no matter how far they travel, connected to home. We did this together. Not just those of us who fought, but every human who refused to accept that we'd reached our limits. Every scientist who kept pushing boundaries. Every engineer who believed impossible was just a challenge. Every person who looked at the stars and said, 'We belong there.'" The observation deck filled with crew members, drawn by her words. They represented the diversity of humanity, different cultures, different backgrounds, all united by the dream of a better future. Natasha continued, her voice strong and clear. "The road ahead won't be easy. Change never is. We'll face challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But we'll face them as we always have, together, with courage and determination and the absolute refusal to give up. Because that's who we are. That's who we've always been. We're the species that learned to make fire and used it to transform the world. We're the species that looked at the sky and built machines to fly. We're the species that stood on our home planet and decided the entire universe was our destination. And now, we're the species that's proving to the galaxy that limits are meant to be challenged, not accepted." The crew erupted in cheers, the sound echoing through the station. Natasha felt Sienna's hand on her shoulder, felt the connection between them, between all of them, a web of shared purpose and hope that stretched across light years and would continue growing as long as humans reached for the stars. She looked out the window one more time at Earth, at the ship surrounding it, at the vast darkness beyond filled with endless possibilities. Somewhere out there, the Ancient Ones were watching, approving. Somewhere out there, new civilizations were learning that they didn't have to accept the limits others imposed. And somewhere out there, the next generation of explorers was preparing to push even further, to discover even more, to prove once again that human potential had no ceiling. The age of limitation was over. The age of unlimited possibility had begun. And it was beautiful. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.